Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Equilibrium. I'm your host, Bria, and I'm here with Kelly West Keyser. How are you, Kelly?
Great. I'm excited to see you.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. Thank you for joining us. It's our special Women's Health series, and you are a registered dietitian, correct?
Yes.
With a specialty in diabetes, a diabetes educator.
Yes, exactly.
That's perfect. I want to know all about this. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you got started.
Yeah. So I went to Auburn for my undergraduate, and prior to Auburn, my older sister was in college for 3 years ahead of me and went through with nutrition. And so she kind of sparked my interest in becoming a dietitian because she is also one. So when I went to Auburn, I started in nutrition and minored in psychology also, just because which is actually how I know Bria, because we had psychology classes together. And so then I got my undergraduate degree in nutrition dietetics. Then I went to UAB in Birmingham for my master's in nutrition science. And to become a dietitian, you have to do an internship to like getting supervised practice under other dietitians. So for a year, I did my internship in Birmingham in hospitals such as UAB and other places. And then I worked for 1 year at the weight management clinic at UAB called Eat Right while I was finishing up my master's. So that's kind of the education piece prior to working.
Very cool. Now, so you said your sister had kind of sparked your interest in nutrition. Tell me how you started your own practice and kind of where you are now.
Yeah. So I, in 2016, moved to Mobile, and I started in a private practice there under a physician who was a certified in obesity medicine. And I worked with her until the pandemic started. So that's when I got experience to be able to take my certification exam to become a diabetes educator and got amazing experience. She was an OBGYN in the area for like 35 years and just learned so much working in that practice. So our office closed when COVID happened and she decided not to reopen it. And so I started my own practice and was able to continue those patient relationships from Healthy Weight for Me, which was the practice name. And so I just dropped the for me and became Healthy Weight Nutrition. And then because I just did the nutrition piece of the office anyways. And then I work with physicians that are local also, and they refer patients to me. So most of my patients are either word of mouth from Healthy Weight for Me or from physician referrals typically. And so I'm doing entirely telehealth since the pandemic, and I plan on sticking with it because I have people all over Alabama, and I'm looking to get licensed in other states such as Florida and Mississippi also, just so I can keep expanding.
Very cool. So how long is it a long, like extensive study process to get the certification?
So to become a diabetes educator, I think you had to have 2,000 hours of experience with patients with diabetes. And then I had to take an exam and that's how I became that. For the registered dietitian exam, you have to do that internship in your undergrad. And that was very stressful, but all the dietitians know you get through it and everyone from Auburn passes first time. So it's fine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Good.
not
Now,
really.
tell me, so your services at Healthy Weight Nutrition include weight management, diabetes care, and more.
Mhm.
Tell me what made you focus on those topics?
Yeah, in my internship, worked a lot in the hospital, and there were so many patients that either on dialysis with kidney failure or having heart attacks or just a lot of diseases that could be prevented if they had gotten care years ago. So I knew after being in the hospital that I was like, I really want to be on the preventative side of medicine just because um, it's so rewarding when someone says, "Hey, I have this issue. Can you help me?" And then we prevent that issue from getting worse. And
Mhm.
that's what I love about diabetes care too. Is diabetes is so preventable. There is a huge genetic link with diabetes. However, with lifestyle intervention and some medications with the doctors, we can really prevent the progression of it to where people don't have to get on insulin. They don't have to have the complications. That doesn't necessarily have to happen. So it's super empowering when I get someone in my office that has pre-diabetes and I can be like, hey, if we do this, we can reverse this. And a lot of times they're not hearing that at the doctor because the doctors doesn't have as much time as I unfortunately have.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I feel like if you can stop it right then and there, that's like perfect.
Yes.
Well,
Yes. So
Kelly, let's go ahead and dive into some of our submitted questions.
yeah.
Hopefully, we can get some good answers and everyone can, figure out how to beat diabetes. I feel like it's very helpful. Okay. What are some signs that I have diabetes, and can exercise and healthy eating prevent me from getting diabetes?
So, a lot of times you will not have any signs of diabetes or pre-diabetes. So, the way that that's diagnosed is going to be on a blood test. There's two different tests that doctors generally use. Your fasting blood sugar, if it's elevated, they can diagnose pre-diabetes or diabetes with that. Or there's another test called hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month average of your blood sugar, which is also a diagnostic tool. So if you have pre-diabetes, probably not going to have really symptoms.
Hmm.
When you hear about like really bad cases of people getting diagnosed with, and I'm talking about type 2 diabetes, just FYI.
Now, can you tell us the differences before we
So
kind of
type
switch to type 1?
type 2 diabetes is going to be what's generally called like adult onset, or the one that is more lifestyle driven, whereas type 1 diabetes was previously called juvenile diabetes, which is where the pancreas stops producing insulin, whereas type 2 diabetes is more a picture of insulin resistance, which I can kind of talk about in a minute.
Mhm.
um, so with that A1C test, you can get diagnosed with that on like just a general lab panel. Doctors should, unless you have like obesity or some other risk factor, they're probably not checking it when you're younger, but
Mhm.
just depending on your physician, they might be checking it, or you can always ask to have it checked. So when you really intense signs of diabetes, where your diabetes has progressed to be where your A1C is very high and you've probably had diabetes for years, is going to be like excessive thirst, excessive urination, because it's already progressed at that point.
Mhm.
So if we can catch people in that early phase, so there's something called like the diabetes prevention program in America. It's by the CDC, and the research they've done shows that if someone's pre-diabetic and they can lose 7% of their body weight. So we're talking, if someone weighs 200 pounds, 15 pounds, they can reverse their prediabetes. So it doesn't take, you don't have to be an ideal BMI
Mhm.
to, reverse that, which is really, really cool.
That's
And I think that's why also I love like our healthy weight nutrition, because it's like you can be healthy at a weight that isn't like I have to
exactly.
fit a certain mold. So that's kind of like how you can diagnose it. Question about preventing, absolutely. So that diabetes prevention program research also had people doing physical activity every week. And even if someone can't like exercise, I think getting a lot of steps every day, like wearing some kind of pedometer, can be motivating. So yeah, you absolutely can prevent the progression, for
And
sure.
so, yeah, and obviously combined with the way that you're eating as well, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So, our second question is, I gain weight around my stomach easily and want to lose weight in the next few months. What foods should I eat to avoid weight gain and bloat?
So, a lot of times, abdominal weight gain is linked with insulin resistance, which is what I mentioned earlier about with diabetes. And so, generally speaking, the things that make insulin resistance worse is going to be really high sugar intake or high carbohydrate intake. And I'm not saying you can't eat any carbs or have to cut out all carbs. However, I would say let's make sure that we're not drinking sugary drinks, or really eating a lot of sugary beverages there, or sugary foods in general. Probably going to help. If that's kind of where you gain weight, I would say like reducing the amount of sugar you're consuming would definitely help.
Got it. Okay. Now, this person loves pizza, pepperoni, sausage, and extra cheese, and they eat it almost daily.
Yeah.
How could they find a healthy alternative to that? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so I always joke that like pizza is my favorite food group. So I think that pizza can be. I want everyone to have a piece of pizza, not just a piece, but you know what I mean. Like I think we need balance in our diets, because so many people think healthy eating is like only salads and grilled chicken, and that is not the case.
Right, right.
And so I think with it every day, I would say like, okay, if you don't feel good about eating it every day, like maybe let's try and reduce it to a few times a week. But also maybe let's put some energy into like what other foods do you also like that we
Mhm.
can add and cook and prepare at this, like maybe another Italian dish, like chicken parmesan and like have a salad with it, or other things that are like kind of on brand but maybe not just pizza, so we could add some other food groups in there. So yeah, I think just putting some effort into cooking something different also, then you can enjoy it.
Now, what do you think about people that make the pizzas at home themselves? So you get
Yeah,
like naan and you get like tomato sauce and your
yeah,
own cheese. Is that a little bit better than eating
yeah.
at Domino's or something?
That's like my family's favorite thing to do is we make like our dough from scratch, which is super easy. I can share my recipe. And it's like four ingredients, and then make sauce and cheese. And it's kind of like a fun Friday night thing, but we'll do all different fun toppings like capers and olives and, sun-dried tomatoes or
Yeah,
caramelized onions and goat cheese. So you can definitely make it fun. And I feel like my stomach feels better when I eat that versus like ordering pizza, because I feel like the amount of like cheese I'm consuming is probably less, which don't get me wrong, cheese is my second favorite food group. But I think it's just like a little bit lighter and fresher ingredients. So therefore I feel a little bit better about it.
yeah, exactly. I feel like a lot of the ones from like Domino's and Pizza Hut are like lathered in butter.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
enough about pizza. Tell me about the link between PCOS and diabetes and the insulin resistance.
Mhm. So PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it shares a lot of times. One of the signs of it is insulin resistance. So it's going to be an elevated fasting insulin level. So what insulin does in the body is because we hear the word insulin, but sometimes we're like, I don't know, like someone needs to eat a muffin when they're hiking or something,
Yeah.
like kind of our thought.
Yeah.
So what happens with insulin is we eat carbs and our body breaks them down into sugar, and then we absorb them into the blood. So we have sugar in our blood, it's floating around, so blood sugar. Insulin comes when that happens and says, oh, we got to get that sugar out of the blood into the muscle and the brain so it can be used for energy and burned. So, and if we don't have enough insulin, like in type 1 diabetes, that sugar just keeps rising in the blood and it can't get into the brain for energy. So with type 2 diabetes, and sometimes also if someone has insulin resistance with PCOS, what happens is we're getting in too much sugar. And so the pancreas is like, we can do this, more insulin, more insulin, more insulin. And then the cells get very resistant to it. So it's kind of like, think about like bacteria resistance.
Mhm.
Like we need more and more antibiotics to do the same thing. So we need more and more insulin to do the same job to get that sugar into the cell.
Got it.
And then the pancreas gets tired and it's like, oh, we can't do it anymore. And so it stops producing as much insulin. And then the blood sugar starts creeping up. And that is when the blood sugar starts creeping up like that is when we see the A1C and the fasting sugar going up. When a type 2 diabetic has to get on insulin down the road, if they have to, is because their pancreas is not producing enough insulin. And then they need that medication to help supplement to get that sugar into the bloodstream. So both PCOS and diabetes have that insulin resistance. The other thing about insulin resistance is the higher the insulin, we're then in fat storage mode. So it makes it easier to gain weight, especially in that abdominal area, if you have PCOS or diabetes.
Got it. I had no idea that there was a link between those two things.
Mhm. Not always. Like someone can have PCOS and not have diabetes, and
Yeah,
someone may not have, extreme insulin resistance with PCOS either, but a lot of times they do overlap.
I had no idea. Okay. Our next question is, how do you diagnose and treat someone with an eating disorder?
Great question. Yes. So generally, when I have a patient that comes to me with an eating disorder, they have already gotten a diagnosis from either a physician or a therapist. And if I have someone that I think comes to me that it might have the start of an eating disorder, I don't normally like diagnose them, but there is diagnostic criteria online with the National Eating Disorder Association. And I only see patients that have eating disorders if they're also have that team of providers, so a physician and a therapist, because you have to have that team to effectively treat eating disorders.
Mhm.
Um, for more of a subclinical picture of eating disorders, I kind of call it like the continuum of disordered eating. I see a lot of that. So it's not, someone's not going to meet the criteria weight wise for anorexia, or maybe we're not binging and purging as often as someone with diagnosable bulimia. But the kind of disordered eating things I see, I kind of call like the food rules or the diet rules. And so it's like, I better eat all this cake today because I can't eat it tomorrow because I got to start my diet again.
Mhm.
Or, I can't eat pizza if I'm on my diet today, but I can eat it Saturday because that's my cheat day.
Mhm.
Those kind of things I red flag and try to help people work through like, okay, we got to let go of the food rules. And one thing I always do is we're not allowed to say good and bad. Like we're not allowed to label food bad because what happens is a lot of times if someone says, okay, pizza's bad, which it's not, but pizza's bad, I ate pizza. Well, I've already been bad, so I might as well keep being bad.
Right.
And, that's so destructive, I think, to like just our mental health and also our eating habits in general. So I really try just with all of my weight management patients, diabetes patients, anyone, like we try and work through those things so we can kind of think a little bit more rationally because those food rules are really not rational typically.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you don't accept someone if they don't have a physician and a therapist already in place. That's great because I feel like you're helping them with the food and the therapist can kind of help them mentally work through something.
Yes, and that is something I have to like sometimes when you are in my role, I have to remind myself like my job is to help them eat balanced meals. Like that is my job. The therapist job needs to be the therapist because there is so much like emotion behind getting those meals on the plate and in the body, but it's very important that they have a good therapist. And I have awesome therapists I refer with in Mobile. They've been awesome and just like coaching me also when I kind of got into seeing patients with eating disorders. So I'm very thankful for them.
And that's really great because also you said your minor was in psychology as well, so it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yes, yes. I feel like if I need another degree, it's to become a therapist. Like,
I've
yeah,
always been so fascinated with becoming a therapist myself. That's another conversation.
not,
I
not
wanted
good.
to,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about kind of that food plan. That this isn't one of the submitted questions, but it's a. I see you mentioned that you kind of help people with their food plan. How does that normally look? Is it just like day by day breakdown of like make sure you eat this, this, and this? How does that work?
Great question. So it looks very different for every person I meet with. I am all about meeting someone where they're at. So what I typically do in an initial visit is I kind of, get the rundown of their life. They have kids. What's their work schedule? Are they night shift? What's our eating pattern looking like? And then typically what we do together is run through breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, drinks. What are they doing right now? And then I will interject some suggestions of like, hey, what if you add this, or what if we swap this out to be a healthier option here? And so we kind of just run through that. And then I'll help them brainstorm, like if they're like, I don't know what to do, because so often it's like, should I eat this? Should I not eat that? Should I, what should I do? And I'm like, okay, we need to stop shooting and but we come up with the ideas that they feel like is realistic for their budget, their time. Because some people like if we're eating fast food every meal, like let's work on reducing that. If we're
Mhm.
like a gourmet chef, like we have more options. So it just kind of depends on where they are. Does that kind of answer that?
No,
Um,
is it? I guess more. Is it change week by week? Do you give them like a major group of like these are okay or not good or bad foods, but like foods that you should be eating or?
Yeah, so I typically work on kind of like a food group like
Mm.
plan. So I'm like, okay, here's dinner. And I don't know if you remember the food pyramid, right? That was like the worst thing that ever happened to America. But my plate is the newer food pyramid. And basically it's like, here's your plate, and it's half fruit and veggies, a starch, and a protein.
Mhm.
So I think that's super helpful with meal planning. And not every meal is going to hit that. Like pizza's not going to hit that unless we add a salad or something.
Right.
But it's
They've
if
done
we can say, okay, what's your favorite starch? Okay, you like rice sometimes, pasta sometimes, cornbread. Let's have a starch.
it. Mhm.
Let's put a green veggie on the plate. Here's this list of green veggies. Let's go with this and let's mix it up. And I have a list of like 20 vegetables. I'm like, what do you like from this? And then protein wise, like, okay, let's have shrimp, let's have fish, let's have chicken, whatever. And if I do work with vegetarians and stuff also, so it'll look a little different.
Mhm.
But so yeah, that I feel like if we have kind of the structure of like these are the food groups we need, and then we can add tons of variety from there.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, our next question is: I like working out in the morning, but can never find a light, healthy meal to eat that I like to eat beforehand. Do you have any suggestions?
Awesome. Well, kudos for working out in the morning because I think that's like when it's probably going to happen for most working adults. There's like a million reasons to talk yourself out of it in the evening.
I feel
So
like I'm more of a morning workout person. Like at nighttime, I'm like, I just want to sit down and
yes,
watch
I did
TV.
not used to be, but it's definitely better now. So I think you need some carbs before working out. Carbs are quick and easy energy. So things that would do that is like maybe some oatmeal. I don't know if that's good, or I do like a piece of toast and peanut butter before a run, or a banana and peanut butter, or any other nut butter. Or my husband loves to eat like dried fruit before he runs. So like figs and dates. So a good like natural source of sugar and carbs. Or you could do like a simple granola bar that has a little bit more carbs, like a Lara bar, or even like, if depending on the length of your workout, Cliff bars have a decent amount of carbs, like 50 grams. But if you're going for like an hour workout, that might be appropriate. So those would be kind of simple carb, like easily digestible. What you don't want to do is like eat something with tons of fat or anything that's going to be like heavy on your stomach. So something simple like that might be good.
Perfect. Okay. So this person says, what kind of protein should I add to my diet to gain muscle?
Yes. So I think as far as the type of protein, if someone's trying to build muscle, we want to make sure it's like a good quality complete protein from an like generally speaking, probably from like an animal source, such as a whey protein. So if it's like a protein powder or like chicken, fish, something like that, what I would do is after your workout, add about 30 grams of protein at that meal afterwards. And that can be a shake or with food. So like 30 grams of protein sounds like a lot. If that's chicken, palm of your hand would be about 30 grams. And 30 grams of that good quality protein is actually enough of the right amounts of amino acids to help turn on muscle manufacturing in combination with resistance training. So if you're doing weights or anything strength training wise, that typically does it. Some bodybuilder, protein powders and stuff will be like 40, 50 grams. You don't really get more muscle building beyond that 30, 35 grams. If someone's like a big man, maybe 40, but generally speaking, they recommend sticking that amount. And most people, protein's something I talk a lot about with my patients because protein's super important in managing hunger. Think about when you like eat a bunch of grilled chicken, you're not going to want to go eat more grilled chicken versus like chips, carbs. I'm going to eat as much, like I can eat the whole basket of tortilla chips and then want more.
Right.
So protein at your meal can help keep you fuller longer. So I generally recommend getting that 20 to 30 grams of protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner versus the classic American picture is like cereal for breakfast with like 4 grams of protein. And then like maybe I skipped lunch or had like a snack and then like 10 ounces of meat at dinner. So kind of dividing it up, I think can really help with like hunger and not overeating later. So it can kind of make it more like steady.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, those are all of these submitted questions. But I wanted to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
You are a marathon runner,
Yes.
which is something I could never do. But tell me a little bit, like, so how did you get into that? Like, how does that work?
So I was really slow in high school. So like I think I got last place in the 2 mile on the track one year, in like the Shelby County Championships. So I just like I was iron deficient, and side note. But so I just kept like running longer because I wasn't fast. So I was like, well, I can keep going. So I did like a half marathon in high school, and then in college started taking iron and got a lot faster. It was great. And then I did my first marathon my senior year of college, and it was terrible. Everyone, if
Oh,
your
really?
first marathon's not terrible, you're not doing it right. You just like you got too fast and you die. It hurts. But my big goal over the past 5 years has been to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And so there's like a time cutoff you have to do. And so I qualified in 2019 for the 2020 Boston Marathon. Unfortunately, didn't get to do it, which was very devastating after like 2 solid years of training.
Yeah.
But we did the virtual. We had a great backyard shindig. It was a good time.
Oh, cute.
Yes, and I'm doing the Chicago Marathon in October this year. So my goal maybe is to do like the World Majors, which is so Boston and Chicago are both marathon. But marathon requires a lot of fuel. So any runners out there, like eat your carbs, eat your food, like you got to put a lot of fuel in the tank, but
And that's pizza. That's pizza for you, right?
yeah, pizza's the perfect pre-race meal for sure.
Now, I wanted to see, or what is the number one thing that you find people normally come to you at your practice?
What's the number one reason?
Hmm.
I would say I probably see more weight management than anything else. And I think like diabetes can go along with that too. A lot of times, not always. But yeah, that's probably the most. So people who want to eat better, want to prevent diseases, want to lose weight, or not. It's not always like a significant amount of weight, but just to like
Maintain.
also stop. Exactly. Maintenance is the thing that I stress so much because I'm like, if we can stay where we are and not keep gaining 2, 3 pounds a year over time, that's super, super important for just preventing those issues. So probably mostly that, but it's honestly a good mix.
Got it. Got it. So tell people if someone wants to find you or reach out to you, tell people if you have a website, Instagram,
Yes.
what's your contact info?
Yes. I am a terrible Instagrammer, but I have an
Aren't we
Instagram.
all?
Yeah, I'm not an influencer, like I would say, but my phone number's on there. So my Instagram handle is Healthy Weight Nutrition. I'm on Facebook. I post like, once every 4 months. But my website is healthyweightnutrition.com. I can have my email on here. Generally, I would say if you want to reach me, give me a call. And I also accept insurance, which is great. And that's because a lot of Blue Cross plans and United Healthcare plans have unlimited
Mm,
dietitian visits. And
I
so
never knew that. Wow.
mhm, yeah, and it's awesome coverage. It's getting better. And so I'm licensed in Alabama. So if someone's in Alabama, I can see them. But it's yeah, the insurance coverage is amazing because it's great for insurance companies. If we're, helping someone get off of an insulin medication, we're saving them tons of money, so it's awesome. So
Well, perfect. Thank you, Kelly. It's so
yes.
nice to talk to you. We will see you next time.